Today on the Bar Business Podcast, discover the 3 invisible systems that actually help decide whether or not a guest stays for drink 3. Master the quick on-site audit, what to measure, and what target ranges keep people comfortable with your environment. And learn the first fixes that actually move revenue and how to choose the next upgrade to your bar. Hello and welcome to the Bar Business Podcast, where we help bar owners increase profits, attract loyal guests, and simplify operations so you can avoid burnout and finally enjoy your life outside of your bar. I'm your host, Chris Schneider, the Bar Business Coach. The Bar Business Podcast is brought to you by QuickSpec. And full disclosure, I'm a co-founder. We built QuickSpec to give you back your time and help you work smarter, not harder. QuickSpec connects your POS data, layers in real-world context, and gives you actionable forecasts and KPI dashboards that allow you to make data-driven decisions so you can spend less time guessing and more time on what matters. Staff smarter, order better. Stop planning for rushes that never show up or getting caught off guard by the ones that do. When you make decisions based upon real data, not guesswork, you get your time back and your team runs smoothly. Check it out at quickspec.com. That's QUIXSPEC.com. And make sure to sign up for our early access program on the homepage. Today, we're talking about a vibe audit. We talk a lot about numbers, whether that's KPIs or your P&L or your pricing. But today, we're going to talk about how we can measure things about the vibe in our bar. And I think it goes without saying, vibe is not just an Instagram aesthetic. Vibe is how people feel while they're at your establishment. And we can determine measurable things based on vibe. There are inputs. Things like dwell time, drink count per guest, and revenue per seat hour tell us how we're doing. And there are 3 systems that we can measure to work on our vibe. And that's our lighting, our acoustics, and our temperature. So your POS, most of the time what we're talking about, that's tracking your revenue, but your ambiance is going to generate revenue. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to really get into this today is when we think about Gen Z, when we think about where this business is going, we're looking at a lot of younger guests who are going out less, but spending more, and they're worried about experience. Those experientially driven guests are not worried about what things cost as much as they're worried about having a good time. So we need to work on everything in our bar to give them the best time possible. Now, ambiance seems a little bit weird, so let's talk a little bit before we get into what to measure, and how to adjust it, into why ambiance pays. How is this actually going to help our bottom line? So, a general rule of thumb, everything else being equal, ambiance is what's going to make people come to your bar compared to the bar next door. Now, pricing, programming, drink selection, quality, your cocktail menu, your menu, all these things are going to drive revenue. But assuming parity on all that with your neighbor down the street, what's going to drive people to your bar over theirs is ambiance. So it's something we don't think about enough, but has a huge impact on our bottom line. Now, let me give you some stats here. When we're looking at lighting, we're going to measure in lux. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, a lux is a lumen per meter squared. You can get meters for this stuff, right? It's like, what's a decibel? I don't know, but it's how loud something is. What's a lux? I really don't know, but it's how bright something is. But here's the thing. If we go too bright, and we're going to call that 500 or greater lux, people move faster and leave sooner. Think about a place like Walmart or an airport. They're always bright. You're rushing through. Contrast that to someplace dark, cozy, intimate. You're going to just walk slower. You're going to be less agitated. So anything over 500 lux is going to be bad in a bar. What's our target? 150 to 300. Now, this is going to depend on the zone that you're in. And by zone, I mean, like, where on the planet are you? How bright is it outside? You know, what are people used to for their lighting given the season even? Because I think most of us know that live in places like Indiana, where I am, where it's been pretty dreary. The sun came out today and I'm like, oh shit, it's bright. Because the sun came out for the first time in weeks. In those cases, I'm going to expect a little bit darker lighting when I go into an establishment, as opposed to in the middle of summer when the sun's out all the time and I expect a little bit brighter lighting because I'm used to the brighter lights. So if you're in Colorado in the winter where it's normally sunny versus Indiana in the winter where it's normally cloudy, you're probably going to adjust your lights a little bit differently. But that 150 to 300 lux range is where most people are going to feel comfortable. When it comes to sound, now sound is an interesting one too, because with sound, if I want a club environment, if I'm having a high, intense, fun, really strong party vibe going on, I'm going to want my sound higher. But generally speaking, anything above about 75 decibels is going to raise people's stress. For roughly every 10 decibels above 72 decibels, you're going to cut minutes off your dwell time. So if your music's too loud, you're probably going to have people dwell less. Now, obviously, if you're trying to create that party environment on a Friday or Saturday night, that's a different thing than what I'm talking about here. But I think we've all been to the bar where it's 2 o'clock on a Tuesday and there's three people there and the music is so loud you can't think. That's what I'm really referring to. So sometimes we want loud sound, but oftentimes we want to match where people are. And that's right, not higher than 72 decibels, 70 decibels. Really, uh, the sound should scale with the sound of your restaurant or your bar. And in my opinion, unless I'm trying to create that party atmosphere, I want the music just a little bit quieter than the crowd noise. So if my crowd is at 60 decibels, I want the music at like 58. If my crowd's at 75 decibels, I want my music in 72, 73 decibel range. Now, you can get meters for this, but you can also kind of hear, is the music way louder than the people? If it is, turn it down a little bit. If it's not, turn it up a little bit. And then let's talk temperature. The comfort zone for most people is going to be 68 to 72 degrees. Outside that range, your dwell time is going to drop. People are not going to spend as much time in your bar because they're uncomfortable. And we see this all the time, especially for some reason in summer. You go into places and there's 65 degrees because the air conditioners are cranked. And a lot of times that's because the staff is complaining that they are hot. Well, I'm sorry to say this. If you're working in a kitchen, if you're running around with plates stacked up your arm, carrying trays, running around doing a bunch of physical work, you're going to be warmer than your guests who are sitting still. But I also think it's important to remember we don't adjust temperature for our team to be comfortable. We adjust temperature for our staff or for our guests to be comfortable. So you want to find that balance, but that 68 to 72 range, that's pretty much where you want to live, assuming you're not in a place with very extreme temperatures or have some local reason why you wouldn't do that. For example, if you're in a place that's really cold and a lot of people are wearing clothes to be outside where it's really cold, you probably don't want it quite 68 because that might be a little bit hot for your guests, but you can figure that out, right? This is pretty logical stuff here. Now, to give you an idea of what this can do to your ROI when we get the lighting, the sound, and the temperature correct, well, your ROI is pretty high. I mean, generally speaking, when we're looking at changing temperature, you're moving a thermostat. There's no cost there. When we're talking about changing sound, we're talking about adjusting a sound volume. There's no cost there. The only place that there could be cost here is if you need to get some dimmers for your lights. But if you own a bar, I'm assuming you have dimmers already. Maybe you need to get rid of some lights. That's real easy. Just unscrew them. Maybe it's too dark in your bar. You need to make it a little bit brighter. You need to buy some lights. That's really the only time that expense is going to come into play here. The rest of this is just adjusting what you already have. So how do we do a vibe audit? How do you know what's going on? Now, you can get a decibel meter, a lux meter, and a thermometer all on Amazon for 30 to 50 bucks each. So you can just go buy this equipment, but you can also, again, use your senses of sight, touch, and sound, hearing, to get a good understanding of that. But if you want to get really scientific with it, get a lux meter, get a decibel meter, get a thermometer. Again, you can get these all on Amazon pretty easily for, 25, 50 bucks, somewhere in that range. Now, if you get those or you don't, and you're just trying to do this with your own senses, I want you to try to measure it at 3 times throughout your night, 6 p.m., 9 p.m., and midnight. For the lighting audit, what we want to look at is bar seating, table seating, walkways, and bathrooms. Again, anything above 500 lux, if we're using a meter, is going to be way too bright. Your walkways, you want to make sure they're a little bit more lighted. So we want to be in that kind of 300 to 400 lux range. Your tables, 150 to 250 lux. Now, the one thing I will say about going too low is if you do go way too low, people do shady things in the dark. Sometimes that's not what you want in a bar, but generally speaking, we want those tables pretty dim. We want to give a nice atmosphere. And then behind the bar and on the bar itself, we want to go a little bit brighter, say 200 to 300 lux, because people are working there and they kind of need it. Another thing to always remember with lights, and this is huge, look at the temperature. So temperature's a little bit weird with lights. We measure it in, thousands of K. I forget what K is. Doesn't matter. But the lower the number, the warmer the light, the higher the number, the brighter the light or the cooler the light. And warm light is going to get you more towards that yellow. Cool light's going to get you towards that white, that blue style light. Think fluorescent that's really high in the color temperature scale versus incandescent, the old school bulbs, Edison bulbs, which would be really low on that scale. What we want to do is make sure that we're in kind of that 2,500 to 3,000 K range. Bottom line here is I am a pale white dude. I have a 2,500 K light on me right now. Why? Because if I put on a 5,000 K light and you were watching this video, you'd wonder if I was part of the wall because I'd look like a freaking ghost because I'm too white because it's the middle of winter. Warmer color lights make white people look better. And people want to look good. Now, obviously, we shouldn't plan our whole concept around white people per se, but generally speaking, for anyone in the paler side of humanity, warm lights are going to make you look more pink and less like a ghost. And that's good. We want our guests in our bar to look good. When it comes to sound, early evening, we want to be in that kind of 65 decibel range. As the night goes on, right? Probably get up towards 75, and then the late night, bring it back down more towards around 70 decibels. That obviously, like I said earlier, is going to depend upon your bar and how busy it is. And my rule of thumb, just the ear test, is that I want it just a little bit quieter than the folks in the bar so that it's nice and in the background, but it doesn't make you yell. If your guests have to yell to talk, you're probably doing something wrong unless you have a concert or that's the vibe you're going for because it's a party night. One of the good things to look for in your bar when you have it completely empty, like, after everybody's gone home at night or in the morning when you're just in there by yourself, clap a few times. See how much it echoes. If that echo is going to hang around for more than about 2 seconds, you might have some hard surface reflection problems that's going to amplify that sound, muddle it, and make it more difficult. So you might want to look at some sort of sound dampening within your bar in order to make the environment for sound better overall. Now, when it comes to temperature, like I said, the ideal temperature, we're talking 68 to 72 degrees. Humidity, we want as close to 50% as possible. And so that's just a regulation on a thermostat, right? That part is really easy. That's the easiest thing in your vibe to measure is that temperature and to get it on point. Now, if you have problems in any of these areas, you do this measurement and you say, oh, this is bad. Here's some things you can do to help fix it. If it's a lighting issue, go get some dimmers. Dimmers solve lighting issues. Also, make sure you have warm bulbs. If you want to, you can go with smart bulbs. Now, that makes it even easier to adjust throughout the night, and you can do it from a tablet or whatever, but a dimmer switch on the wall works great. Acoustic fixes, if your room has echo issues or is too loud, look at sound dampening. So curtains, fabric wrapped panels, rugs, putting in carpet, all those things are going to help sound work better in your bar. That can get a little bit expensive, but of course there are ways to do this pretty cheaply because curtains, fabric, you can get it, you can put it places. It works. Now, why is this something you should absolutely do, right? To wrap us up for today. Ambiance is what's going to differentiate you from the person down the street in most people's minds. People are out for an experience. They're out to have something different than what they have at home. If all you do is match the person down the street, they can go either way. If you have the better vibe because you are scientifically measuring and controlling the temperature in your bar, the lighting in your bar, and the sound levels in your bar, you're going to create an environment that feels better to people, that has a better vibe, that increases your dwell time and keeps those guests there, raising your guest checks, raising your sales per labor hour, and most importantly, increasing your bottom line. That about wraps it up for today. If you enjoyed today's insights, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review. If you are ready to take your bar to the next level, schedule a strategy session with me by clicking the link in the show notes below. Until next time, have a great day, and we will talk again later.